Andreas Deja.
Andreas Deja.
Andreas Deja.
This is Andreas Deja, one of the greatest animators ever.
I practically gift wrap those cubs for you.
Oh, I could pass nothing anytime.
You are late.
For 30 years, he perfected his craft at Disney while creating some of the most iconic and endearing characters in animation history. The dude's an absolute legend whose work defined the childhood of an entire generation. With just a pencil and paper, he was a key force in taking 2D animation to the next level. And after all these years, I see his movies and characters in a whole new way because I sat down with him recently to ask all the questions I've been dying to ask. In this episode, we deep dive into his characters and his unique animation process.
I remember doing Lilo, and I didn't even know that her animation would be so subtle. Hercules, he kind of moved in an awkward way. Gaston was the toughest.
He shines a light on some hilarious, untold behind-the-scenes secrets.
And then the directors also said, now Andreas, you have to keep in mind, this is the first animation in the movie, and people will judge the film by the way that rhino moves. I'm going like, oh my God, give me some pressure here, right?
We discuss the hidden struggles of being an animator in a changing industry.
I didn't really think that 2D would be replaced by CG. I didn't see that.
And drops a hot take on one of the internet's biggest animation obsessions.
To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure why people are so fascinated with that, because...
Welcome to Animation Hustle, the place where we dive into the funny and untold stories behind your favorite animated movies and TV shows.
Juju, y'all being naughty? Come on over here, you bad boy.
For people who don't know who you are, what are some of the characters you helped create?
My first film was The Black Cauldron, the infamous Black Cauldron. And then I jumped right onto Who Framed Roger Rabbit, King Triton, Gaston, Jafar, Scar in The Lion King, Hercules, Lilo in Lilo and Stitch. I did Mama Odie. Maybe I'm forgetting a film here or so, but that is sort of in a nutshell.
Yeah, okay. Well, tons of characters with different personalities. I guess James Baxter mentioned how for Belle's walk, he wanted her to be kind of like a ballerina, so he kind of pointed her toes out. It's a very unique character thing. I'm wondering if any of your characters have anything like that people can look for once they know about.
Yeah, I mean, the way a character walks should tell you quite a bit of who this character is. And I remember with Jafar, I thought, well, how is he going to walk?
Now, run along and play with your little toys. Yes. Yes. That will be.
Because everybody in that movie is very bouncy. Abu, even Aladdin is very lively. The carpet is bouncy. The genie is crazy bouncy. And so I thought, well, is Jafar going to be bouncy or not? And then the more I thought about it, I thought, no, I got to have some contrast going on here. You know, let sort of a dark cloud over all this bouncy happiness.
Right.
So I decided then he's smooth. He's a smooth guy, the way he talks and tilts his head and also the way he walks. So I had him, it was very easy to make him walk because he's almost on roller skates. You know, there's not a lot of up and down and shifting weight. He comes in and he leaves the scene, you know, he kind of makes a theatrical entrance, you know, and an exit. And it was actually, from a technical point of view, that was very easy because you didn't have to analyze a whole lot.
Then be wed to... Interesting.
And then for someone like Tigger, who's the opposite of that.
He's the absolute opposite.
Besides Pooh Birth, that is. Well, there is this.
Those are the characters you can really get your teeth into, and you can just let go. And there's what we call a lot of squash and stretch in the animation. So the animation is very bouncy. He's bouncing around all the time. So I find those characters actually easier.
I'm really curious about how you handle the more subtle characters. I'm wondering how you handle keeping a character alive when they're not really moving that much.
Yeah, when you have a subtle character or character that shows subtle emotions, it doesn't have a lot of outbursts and emotional changes. It's tougher to do that. It's actually because you have less to work with. I'll just give you one example. When the social worker arrives in the movie Lilo and Stitch, you know, the door opens and this gigantic guy with sunglasses is the social worker who's checking up on things, how things go between her sister Nani and Lilo herself. She just sizes him up and says, "Did you ever kill anybody?" You know, that's not like, "Did you ever kill anybody?" She is just kind of tilting her head, and you have to find, like I said, the right drawing, the right angle, you have to pay extra attention to the poses and the facial expressions because they're going to be seen. There's not going to be a lot of motion there. A drawing has to be really good, even better than as if you're doing something crazy and something with action. I remember doing Lilo, and I didn't even know that her animation would be so subtle going into the project. She looks cartoony, she looks like a character who maybe would move quite a bit. Like she looks almost like a character from the Disney 1940s or something like that, where the animation was very bouncy and lively. But you start animating and you get the dialogue and you get into the psyche of this little girl, and she is very internal. She thinks about things.
No, anything but that.
So who was the easiest character for you to animate?
People ask me the opposite. They ask me often which one was the toughest. And I always, well, I have to say Gaston was the toughest.
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
The realism involved, that he was a villain and he did a lot of, he did cartoony things, but it had to be portrayed with realism, and realism is always hard. So one animator doesn't usually do all scenes of that character because there are too many, and we only had 1 year to animate those movies. So I had a crew. So I had about, I think maybe 4, maybe 5 other animators who helped me with the animation of Gaston. And one of my animators did that scene in the pub to the song where Gaston just bursts out and every last inch of me is covered with hair. And in the storyboard, it was suggested that he opens up his shirt and shows his chest hair. And so the animator did it and it looked fine, except the chest hair. It looked different, not what I would expect, because he drew it like, once the chest area was exposed, he drew it like the hair was growing from the middle outward, and it almost as if it was combed. and I was like, I don't think it should look like that. And then some people said, no, I think it looks interesting. And I made the final decision. I said, no, we got to do something else here. But then what should the hair look like? Is it like long and curly? Is it stubby? So then everybody had an opinion, and I gave everybody who wanted to a Xerox of that final drawing. And well, how would you do it? And then I got all these versions, and then it became in the end a mix of dots and curls. I remember, but it became a big deal because what should that hair look like? Sometimes you get into these situations where you think like, why is this even a problem?
The unexpected stuff that happens as an animator.
Yeah, exactly. I really enjoyed my time at Disney because I could do these different concepts. I was like pigeonholed for a little while doing one villain after another, even though they were all different. Gaston, Jafar, and Scar, they're all different from each other. But there was a time after that where they said, well, do you want to do Hades for the movie Hercules? And I said, if I have a choice, I'd rather do Hercules because I haven't done a character like that who is completely different than these villains, obviously. Somebody who is shy and just wants to prove himself, but he doesn't really know how to approach this girl that's fascinating him, which is Meg, so he kind of moves in an awkward way. And that was, to me, fascinating because it was different.
Are there any scenes that you look back on that you really think capture his personality through the animation? Yeah,
I think when they first meet, I think Megara is washing her hair.
Are you all right, Miss?
Megara. My friends call me Meg. At least they would if I had any friends.
I'm Hercules. My name is Hercules.
He's trying to be not cool, but he wants to sort of cover his shyness. And he's leaning against the tree, to be cool. And then he kind of slips down because the elbow kind of does a thing.
How do you get mixed up with the
Pinhead with hooves? Well, you know how men are.
You just invent these things that he's trying something, like leaning against the tree, but it's not quite working, because he is awkward.
When you look back at some of your old scenes or old characters, are there any moments that you'd want to redo, or is everything kind of like pretty good?
Well, pretty good sometimes. Most
Okay, okay, okay.
sometimes only. Like the scene with Scar and Simba before the stampede happens.
No.
Scar is setting him up on the rock and says, "Now you wait here. Your father has a marvelous surprise for you." And Simba said, "What is it? What is it?" "Well, I can't tell you. Then it wouldn't be a surprise." You know, that whole setup there before the stampede. I animated Scar and Mark did Simba, and that holds up. I look at that now and we're like, "Yep, that's not too shabby." The other one I also feel good about is where Jasmine is cornering Jafar or confronting Jafar about his plan to kill Aladdin, to have him, like he says, beheaded. And they have this conversation, and it's just a nice character contrast. I enjoyed, I still enjoyed that section. And I don't think I would change anything on that one either. But as I said earlier, there's plenty of other stuff where I would like to dive back in and correct. And the old animators felt the same way. You know, I remember talking to Frank Thomas, who is one of the 9 old men, one of the best animators ever. And he kept talking about a scene in Peter Pan where he did Captain Hook. And that one scene really bothered him, and he wished he could do it again. So it's just, I don't know, it's never, I don't want to say it's never good enough, but these things, it's hard to put them away. And you say, well, it's done, the film is over, and it's in theaters, and I can't change anything anymore. It's sort of a really difficult thing to come to grips with.
I'm wondering, like, what scene took you the longest, or like that was the hardest just to get right? Maybe a bunch of different takes on it, or something like that.
2 examples. Let's start with Roger Rabbit. I did the scene toward the end of the movie where the villain has just melted, Judge Doom. He's like dead on the ground, and from the back of the building comes there's a brick wall that gets broken through, and all these toon characters from all studios, actually, they all come running to check out the dead villain. And you got Mickey and Minnie, and you got Bambi, and the Roadrunner, and Betty Boop, and Pinocchio, and on and on and on and on. And when you have a run, you almost have to do every drawing, because every position in a run is important. So it's not like you can just do 3 drawings per second or something like that. You have to do them all. And because there were so many characters, and I also had to study from old videotapes. Now, how does the Roadrunner move? He doesn't really run. He does this beep, beep, beep kind of thing, you know, and Betty Boop does her little girly thing, the way she shakes her hands when she runs. I had to study all that to stay truthful to the characters. So that scene took me a while. And there were several phone calls. "Andreas, where's that scene? You know, you're going to have it done by last Friday, and it's already Wednesday." And so that, just because of the sheer volume of drawings that had to be done, and so many characters, like I said, in one scene, that one took me a long time. And I have to explain, you know, look, I got 100 characters in here. Give me a break.
Right,
know?
right.
So you try to deal or even argue with management. And then the other one was in Lion King. The first scene, the first animation in the movie. Do you remember what scene that was, or what you see? The first thing moving.
Little Mouse?
Before.
The sun rising?
The sun is rising and the rhinoceros lifts his head. So that was my scene. They said, "We don't have any scenes for you yet with Scar because we're working on the layout, but do that rhino for us." You know, the rhino lift. And then the directors also said, "Now, Andreas, you have to keep in mind, this is the first animation in the movie, and people will judge the film by the way that rhino moves." I'm going like, oh my God, give me some pressure here, right? And so I did the rhino lifting his head straight up. And they said, no, have it sort of have the rhino head face the camera at the beginning and then sort of move sideways and up. I think I did that thing 5-6 times because they were so unsure of themselves also, what they wanted at that time. But I thought quietly to myself, is the whole movie going to be like this? I have to animate every scene 6 times? And then, of course, it didn't turn out to be that way at all. But that's just first scene jitters. You want to get it right, and so you try various times. So those are two examples, where things took a little longer than usual.
And I wanted to briefly talk about some of your inspirations of past animators. I know MILT KAHL is a big one for you, but I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about like what made him such a great animator.
He just had a way with staging things and isolating motion. Like when Merlin is talking to Ward in The Sword and the Stone, he needs something to sit on, and the chair is kind of far away. So he turns around, Ward is over there, he turns around and does this little thing, beautiful little finger thing, like a signal for the chair to move closer. And it's just a piece of beauty, that's the way he isolates that motion. Because when you do something like that, you cannot have a lot happening here with the body, because this is the thing that reads.
I saw a drawing of, I think it's the Medusa makeup animation where her eye is like, it's cool. I don't know how to describe it.
Well, yeah, talking about subtlety, that's about as subtle as you can get, a woman taking off her false eyelashes. And not just how do you stage that, but how do you make that entertaining into something that people want to watch? Because it could just be like, okay, there it goes, and she talks, and it's like a nothing scene. And he turned that into a masterpiece where she takes the edge of the eyelashes and pulls, and the flesh goes still with the eyelashes, with the false eyelashes, because it's kind of sticky. And you get this amazing skinny stretch, and then the skin pops off and kind of wobbles back into place as she's holding the loose eyelash. That is just a masterpiece. I can't think of anybody else who could have done it or could have done it that way. But he could also do very, very broad stuff, and had no, like he would say himself, that he didn't have any limitation. He would even say that he's the best draftsman around the studio. He said that's not bragging, that's a fact, So he had a big ego, but he could back it up with his masterful drawings.
And he's the one with the famous head swaggle, right?
I think they call it swaggle. Is that the word online? Somebody
came
swaggle.
Head
swaggle. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure why people are so fascinated with that, because there's other things that he also does a lot, like characters nodding their head or characters shaking their head. This happens a lot when the character makes a negative statement. Like when you say, well, I don't know. That's how MILT KAHL would animate it. For sure he would do this. Or a positive statement would be, yes, I did have dinner, Then he would not. He does this all the time, especially in his later work, to a point where it almost looks a little bit mannered, where you think like, well, you don't always have to do this or that or this, but it's just a personality trait, and he uses it on very different characters. He uses it on the lion in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and he uses it on Edgar the Butler in the Aristocats. So, it always looks good because it's a subtle perspective change on the head that he introduces there to get the effect across. And again, him being such a master draftsman, he can pull it off. It's a little bit overdone to my taste. And I'm saying this to make this guy a human, because his stuff is so masterful that there has to be something wrong with him somewhere. Right. So let's just find something, Yeah.
What is it about 2D animation that you think makes it such a endearing, enchanting art form?
My tools are paper and pencil, and there's just nothing more exciting than an empty sheet of paper, because you can turn that into something absolutely incredible. You do this series of drawings, and it means something. It entertains people. It comes to life. That fascination never gets old. It's the ultimate magical trick. I don't think it's going to completely disappear. Too many people still want it. Too many people love it because it touches you a certain way that other types of animation, especially AI, just can't. AI touches you in terms of, wow, what they can do these days. That's about it, You're sort of impressed. by the technicality of it. But when you have Ka the snake trying to hypnotize Bagheera, and his eyes get sort of affected and become big and bulgy and really big and strange, that's one artist's interpretation of that situation, because he did it that way. If you had another animator, it would be a completely different looking scene, completely different, because it is that personal to animators to have our own personal view on a character or a situation. And that's why I like it, because you see the artist's hand on the screen.
So then for your new film, MUSHKA, everyone is, yearning for 2D animation now. So is all of the entire movie is all hand-drawn, right?
It's all on paper. The scenes are right over there, all stacked up, all on paper, because I didn't want to do it on the Cintiq because I don't think I could. I don't think I draw as well on the Cintiq as I draw on paper. When I have a piece of paper and I put a pencil on it, there's friction, there's a association between the pencil and the paper, which I love, and I didn't want to give that up. So I still animated on paper. My assistant did the in-betweens on paper, and I had other animators also do the same, who helped me. But then we scan our drawings. You can add color with the same program, where you then add the character color, like whether it's skin or black or red or whatever. But even that was a slow process, because if I had chosen a style that was very clean, where the lines were all closed off, when you color in the face, for example, of a character, you just touch it and then telling it this needs to be skin color, and it bleeds to the edge of the shape, right? Well, my style for this film, for MUSHKA, is very sketchy. So they are openings. So that didn't really work. So the people who helped out had to take actually a tool and basically on the screen color it all in and be careful that it wouldn't be in the other area. So it took a long time to give these characters colors. But to me, it was all worth it.
I want to ask you, what was it like, the vibe at Disney during the Renaissance in the 90s? I feel like you guys were low-key rock stars back then. And, what was it like transitioning, seeing the CGI stuff come in?
Well, when Toy Story came out, which was the first blockbuster in CGI, I just thought that this is great. This definitely works, and it was a big hit. And now we have another type of animation. There's always been stop motion animation with puppets. There's always been, of course, hand-drawn. Way in the early days, they did cutout animation. So there are all these different types, and now we have CG animation. Isn't that wonderful? I didn't really think that 2D would be replaced by CG. I didn't see that. Maybe because I didn't want it. I thought there should be animated movies in all mediums, in all types and art forms. But that's what basically happened. And so yeah, here you are. I had to make that choice to be on my own and continue in 2D animation, which I still want to do. I have more ideas for future projects, so I will always do this.
It's incredible, man. I don't want to take up too much of your time. It was great talking with you. Again, you're an animation master, big hero of mine. So it was great getting to hear a little bit more about your process and your characters and your story.
Well, thanks so much for having me on your channel, and thanks for having me as a guinea pig.
Yeah. Hopefully it went well. How do you feel? How do you feel it went?
So far, so good.
Okay. Perfect.